The gate latch burned my bare palm, 14 below, January 12th, and the metal bit like a snake. I pulled my hand back, saw the boot prints in the snow, small, staggering, leading straight to my fence line. She was slumped against the post, 9 years old, maybe less. Her dress was torn at the shoulder, no coat, and her face, Lord have mercy, her face was purple with cold, and something worse. Fists. Somebody'd beaten this child till the blood froze in the creases. I carried her to the truck, her body light as kindling. The drive down to Doc Pruitt's took 8 miles of silence except for her breath, shallow and whistling through split lips. When I kicked open the clinic door, half the town was gathered at Pinewood General next door for mail call. Mrs. Henderson saw us first. She pulled her daughter back, whispered loud enough for God to hear, "That's Vernon Hardin's ward, the cursed one." Doc Pruitt's hands were already moving. "She'll live," he said, "but Vernon'll come with papers." Doc peeled back the girl's dress at the shoulder. The fabric stuck to her skin where blood had dried. I heard the rip of it, heard her whimper even though she was still half gone to the world. Doc's jaw tightened. "Broken ribs," he said. 2, maybe 3. He turned her left hand palm up. A burn scar, wide as a silver dollar, patterned like a stove grate. "This wasn't no accident, Silas. This was deliberate." Marshal Keene stood in the doorway, hat in his hands. He'd been at the store for his monthly rounds, and now his eyes moved from the girl to me like he was working a problem. "You aiming to keep her, Cord?" "She's a child," I said. "Not property. Law says different. She's legal ward of her uncle, Vernon Hardin. He's got papers filed with the county." Keene's voice was flat, the voice of a man who'd learned not to feel what he enforced. "He's been looking for her since yesterday." The girl stirred. Her eyes opened, green, bright as spring grass even through the pain. She saw me and scrambled back on the exam table, a sound trapped in her throat. "Don't," she croaked. Just that one word, raw as a wound. Doc put a hand on her shoulder, gentle. "Easy now. Nobody here's gonna hurt you." But she was shaking, staring at me like I was the one who'd put those bruises on her. Doc reached into his black bag, pulled out 2 pieces of hard candy wrapped in wax paper. He held them out. She looked at the candy, then at his face, then took both pieces fast, like a creature that had learned to grab what it could before the world snatched it back. "That's a girl," Doc said. He wrapped her ribs with long strips of cloth, his hands sure and kind. The smell of carbolic soap filled the room, sharp enough to make my eyes water. When he finished, he turned to me. His voice dropped low. "County'll assign a guardian by spring thaw, May 15th, latest. If Vernon pushes it, could be sooner." I looked at the girl. She was holding those candies in her fist, hadn't unwrapped them, just holding them like they might disappear. "I'll take her to the ranch," I said. Keene put his hat back on. "Your funeral, Cord. Vernon Hardin don't forgive, and he don't forget." The door closed behind him. The bell above it rang once, sharp in the cold air, then went silent. I carried her to the truck. She didn't fight, just went stiff in my arms like a board. The drive back up the mountain was quiet except for the engine's rattle and the wind scraping across the hood. She stared out the window, face pressed to the glass, watching the pines blur past. The ranch sat in a hollow between 2 ridges, sheltered from the worst of the wind. The cabin was small, 1 room downstairs, a loft above, but the stone hearth kept it warm. I'd built it with Martha 30 years back when we thought we'd fill it with children. Never happened. The stillborn boy in 27 took that dream and buried it. I laid the girl on my bed, the only real bed in the place. She watched me with those green eyes, tracking every movement. I pulled the quilt up to her chin, Martha's quilt, the one with the star pattern she'd stitched by lamplight. "You're safe here," I said. She didn't answer, just turned her face to the wall. I fed the fire, made coffee, sat in the chair by the hearth. The smell of wood smoke filled the cabin, mixed with the faint scent of kerosene from the lamp. Outside, the wind picked up, howling through the gaps in the barn. Blue, my old cattle dog, scratched at the door. I let him in and he settled by the fire, nose on his paws. Somewhere past midnight, I dozed off. When I woke, the gray light of dawn was leaking through the window and the bed was empty. My heart kicked. I checked the loft. Nothing. Pulled on my boots and went outside. The cold hit like a fist. 15 below still, maybe colder. Her tracks led to the barn. I found her in the hay, curled up tight in the corner near the old Fordson tractor. She'd pulled a horse blanket over herself, rough wool that smelled of dust and animal. She was asleep, or pretending to be. Her face was turned away, but I could see her shoulders, small and sharp under the blanket. Blue patted over, sniffed at her, then looked back at me. "Won't sleep indoors," I said quietly. "Can't say I blame her." I left her there. Went back to the cabin and fried eggs and salt pork for breakfast. When I looked out an hour later, she was standing in the barn doorway, watching the sunrise. Her breath came out in clouds. She didn't come inside. Not that day, not the next. Sunday came cold and bright. I'd never been much for church. Martha had been the faithful one. But the town expected it. A man living alone on a mountain. That was one thing. A man with a child. That was different. People would talk. They were already talking. I found the girl in the barn, gave her one of Martha's old dresses. Too big, but I'd pinned it at the shoulders. She put it on without a word, her fingers clumsy with the buttons. The church sat on the east edge of town, white clapboard with a bell tower that leaned slightly south. We were late. The singing had already started, voices rising thin in the cold air. I opened the door, and every head turned. The singing stopped. I walked down the aisle, the girl's hand in mine. Her palm was damp despite the cold. We took a seat in the back pew, the wood hard and cold through my trousers. The smell of old hymnals and floor wax hung in the air. Reverend Pike stood at the pulpit, his face carved from granite. He let the silence stretch, let everyone get a good look. Then he opened his Bible. Exodus chapter 20, verse 5, he said. His voice filled the small space, righteous and certain. For I, the Lord thy God, am a jealous God, visiting the iniquity of the fathers upon the children unto the third and fourth generation. The girl's hand tightened in mine. Mrs. Henderson sat 3 rows up with her daughter. She turned, looked at the girl, then leaned to whisper something to the woman beside her. The whisper spread like fire in dry grass. I heard the words, fragments carried on the still air. Hardened curse, bad blood, that poor man. The girl heard them too. She pulled her hand free, folded it in her lap. Her face went blank, the way a door closes. Pike preached for 30 minutes on the sins of the fathers, on corruption passed down through generations, on the burden of wickedness that clung to certain bloodlines. He never said her name, didn't have to. When the sermon ended, people filed out past us. Some nodded, most didn't. Their boots scraped on the wood floor, their skirts rustled, and the cold air rushed in every time the door opened. We were the last to leave. I put my hand on the girl's shoulder, felt her flinch, then steady. We stepped outside, into the bright, bitter cold. Vernon Hardin was leaning against his automobile across the street, arms crossed. He was a tall man, lean as a wolf, with a thin mustache and eyes that calculated everything. He wore a suit too fine for Montana, too fine for church. His shoes were polished to a mirror shine. He watched us come down the steps. Then he smiled, pushed off the automobile, and started walking toward us. The girl went rigid beside me. "Uncle Vernon," she whispered. The first 2 words she'd spoken since that morning in Doc's clinic. Vernon stopped 3 feet away. The smell of his cologne cut through the cold, sweet, and cloying. He took off his hat, held it over his chest like a man at a funeral. "Callie Mae," he said. His voice was smooth as oil. "You gave us all quite a scare, running off like that." She said nothing. Her hand found the back of my coat, gripped it. Vernon's eyes shifted to me. "Mr. Cord, appreciate you looking after my niece. Must have been a burden, her stumbling onto your property in that state." He reached into his coat, pulled out a billfold. $50 ought to cover your trouble. I'll take her off your hands now." "She's not going anywhere," I said. His smile stayed fixed, but something behind it went cold. "She's my blood, Cord, my responsibility. The county gave me guardianship when her mama died, legal and proper." "Legal doesn't make it right." Vernon put the billfold away. He looked at the girl, then back at me. "You're what, 58, 60? Living alone up on that mountain, no woman to help raise a girl child. What do you think the county's going to say when I tell them you're keeping her against her guardian's will?" "I think they'll ask her what she wants." "She's 9 years old. She doesn't know what she wants." He stepped closer, his voice dropping. "Let me make this simple for you, old man. This ranch of yours sits on water rights I need for my downstream parcels. 300 acres I'm selling come summer, and the buyer needs guaranteed water. You've got the spring that feeds my land." So there it was, not about the girl at all, never had been. "She's my blood," Vernon continued. "My sister Lily's bastard girl, Lily who married Martha Cord's younger brother. No, wait." He paused, tilted his head. "Lily Hardin, that's right. Martha Cord née Hardin, your late wife's little sister." His smile widened. "Small world, isn't it? Means this girl's your kin, too. Martha's niece. Practically family." The words hit like a stone. I looked down at the girl, Callie Mae, Her green eyes. Martha had green eyes, and Martha's sister Lily, the one who'd run off with a drifter in 26 who'd died in childbirth the year after. The child I never knew existed. Vernon saw it land. That's right. I took her in when Lily died. Raised her out of Christian duty. And you're going to give her back, or I'm going to make your life hell. I've got lawyers, Cord. I've got friends at the county office. And you've got nothing but an old dog and a broke-down tractor. He put his hat back on, tugged the brim. Think about it. I'll be in touch. He walked back to his automobile. The engine coughed to life, and he drove off, leaving us standing in the cold. Callie's hand was still gripping my coat. She hadn't let go once. Doc Pruitt came 3 days later. I heard his truck grinding up the mountain road, the engine whining in second gear. By the time he pulled up to the cabin, Callie was in the barn. She always went to the barn when someone came. Doc climbed out, carrying his black medical bag and a paper sack. He walked with a limp, old war wound from France, same as mine. We'd both come home in 18 with pieces missing. Brought supplies, he said, handing me the sack. Inside were bandages, a tin of salve, and a small bag of hard candy wrapped in wax paper. How's she healing? Ribs are mending. She doesn't talk much. Talking takes trust. Doc looked toward the barn. She in there? Always is when folks visit. We walked over together, our boots crunching in the packed snow. The barn smelled of hay and cold and the old leather of horse tack I hadn't used in years. Callie sat near the tractor, her back against the wheel. Blue was lying beside her, his head in her lap. Doc knelt down slow, mindful of his bad knee. He set the candy bag on the ground between them. Thought you might like some more of these, he said. Go on, take what you want. She looked at the bag, then at him, reached out and took 2 pieces. Not fast this time. Deliberate. That's good, Doc said. You remember me? I'm the one who wrapped your ribs. He waited. She nodded, just barely. Mind if I check how they're healing? Another nod. Doc opened his bag, pulled out his stethoscope. The metal gleamed dull in the barn light. He warmed it in his hands before pressing it to her chest, over the dress. Breathe in deep for me. He listened, moved it. Again. When he finished, he sat back on his heels. You're doing fine, healing up real good. He looked at her straight, the way you look at a person, not a child. Mr. Cord's taking good care of you, isn't he? She nodded. Good. That's real good. He stood, joints popping, and turned to me. Walk me to the truck? Outside, he stopped by the driver's door, his breath plumed in the cold air. Vernon's been asking questions about you down at the store. B. Lowell told me. He's poking around, seeing who'll back his play. Let him poke. Doc shook his head. Silas, I delivered Martha's stillborn son back in 27. I held that baby boy, told you he was gone. I owe you. He put his hand on my shoulder. If it comes to it, if Vernon pushes this to county, I'll testify. I'll tell them what I saw on that child. That wasn't no accident. Appreciate it? B's been asking me about Vernon's land deals too. Said something's eating at her, but she wouldn't say what. He climbed into his truck, started the engine. As he drove off, I saw Callie standing in the barn doorway, watching him go. She was unwrapping one of the candies. The Fordson tractor had been dead since November. Seized engine, rusted plow hitch, and a carburetor that looked like something a rat had nested in. Spring planting was 2 months off, but if I didn't get it running, I wouldn't have a crop. And without a crop, I'd lose the ranch by fall. I opened the toolbox, a battered metal case that had been with me since before the war. Inside were wrenches, screwdrivers, a ball-peen hammer, and underneath them all, wrapped in oilcloth, the papers. The 1889 water rights deed, signed by my grandfather, granting exclusive use of the spring that fed down through Vernon's parcels. I'd nearly forgotten about it. Callie appeared in the barn doorway. She'd been doing that more, watching me work, staying close, but not too close. Come here, I said. She hesitated, then walked over. I pulled a rag from my back pocket, wiped the grease off a crescent wrench, and held it out. This here's a crescent wrench. The jaw opens and closes, see? You use it when you need to grip something tight. I demonstrated, adjusting the jaw. Give it a try. She took it, her small hands barely spanning the handle. She turned it over, studying how the mechanism worked. Good. Now this one. I picked up a smaller wrench. Socket wrench. Different sizes for different bolts. I laid out 3 more tools, named each one. Ball-peen hammer, flathead screwdriver, needle nose pliers. She listened, didn't speak, but her eyes were sharp. I need to pull this cylinder head, I said, pointing to the engine. Hand me the socket wrench, the big one. She looked at the tools spread on the ground, picked up the flathead screwdriver. Not that one, the socket wrench. She set down the screwdriver, picked up the ball-peen hammer. I reached over, gently took it from her hand. This is the hammer. This, I picked up the socket wrench, is what we need. I handed it to her, then guided her hand to place it in mine. You'll learn. Takes time. The smell of old engine oil and rust filled the cold air. I worked the bolts loose one by one, and she watched, holding the tools I wasn't using like they were something precious. At one point, she leaned forward, pointed at the oilcloth-wrapped bundle in the bottom of the toolbox. What's that? First question she'd ever asked me. Boring old deed stuff, I said. Nothing for little hands. She nodded, didn't press, just went back to watching me work. An hour later, when the sun was dropping behind the ridge, I heard it, soft, barely audible. She was humming, 3 notes, repeating. The same 3 notes Martha used to hum when she worked in the garden, the same lullaby her sister Lily used to sing. My hands stopped moving. I looked at her and she looked back, and in that moment I knew for certain this child was Martha's blood, my blood. Mama sang that song, she whispered. The town meeting was called for the second Tuesday in March. B. Lowell sent word with the mail carrier. Emergency gathering at the store, 7 o'clock, matter concerning custody and county business. I didn't want to go, knew what it would be. But Doc Pruitt showed up at 5:30, said he'd drive us down together, said I'd need witnesses. Callie stayed in the truck when we arrived. The store's windows glowed yellow in the dusk, and I could see shapes moving inside, hear the low rumble of voices. Doc squeezed my shoulder once, then we went in. The pot-bellied stove in the center was burning hot. 20 people, maybe more, crowded into Bee's back room where she kept the county records and the big ledger table. The air smelled of tobacco smoke and wet wool and the sharp scent of kerosene from the overhead lamps. Bee stood behind the table, her reading glasses perched on her nose. She was a solid woman, 54, widowed young, with the kind of spine that didn't bend easy. She nodded when she saw me. Marshall Keene was there, standing by the wall. So were Old Man Jessup and 2 other ranchers I knew by sight, the Henderson family, the shopkeeper who sold flour and nails, and Vernon Hardin's lawyer, a weasel-faced man named Tate holding a leather folder. Vernon wasn't there himself, didn't need to be. His money did the talking. Tate stepped forward, opened the folder. Gentlemen, ladies, thank you for gathering on short notice. My client, Mr. Vernon Hardin, has filed a petition with the county for expedited custody review regarding his ward, Callie Mae Hardin. He pulled out a document, laid it on the table. The paper was crisp, official, stamped with the county seal. Mr. Hardin has legal guardianship, granted in 1927 upon the death of the child's mother. He is her closest living relative. However, the child has been unlawfully retained by Mr. Silas Cord for, he checked his notes, 43 days now. She's safe with me, I said. Tate looked at me over the top of his spectacles. Mr. Cord, you are, if I'm correct, 58 years old. You live alone on a remote mountain property. You have no wife, no female supervision, no means to provide proper schooling or moral guidance for a young girl. Old Man Jessup spat into the spittoon by the door. Boy's fed, ain't she? Got a roof? Adequate shelter is not the same as a suitable environment for child rearing, Tate said smoothly. The county has concerns about Mr. Cord's fitness as a guardian, particularly given his age and circumstances. What about Vernon's fitness? Doc Pruitt's voice cut through the room. I examined that child. Broken ribs, burn scars, signs of prolonged malnutrition and abuse. You want to talk about suitable environments? Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Mrs. Henderson's face pinched tight. Her husband shifted his weight, uncomfortable. Tate smiled, thin and cold. Hearsay, doctor. Children fall. Children disobey and require discipline. Mr. Hardin has raised the girl for 9 years by beating her half to death, I said. The room went quiet. Tate closed his folder. The county hearing is scheduled for March 22nd. That gives you, Mr. Cord, approximately 10 days to prove your fitness, or the child will be returned to her legal guardian. He tucked the folder under his arm. Good evening. He walked out. The door swung shut behind him, the bell above it chiming once. Marshall Keene pushed off the wall. He looked at me, then at Doc, then at the floor. Hearing set, law's the law. Bee cleared her throat. There's more. She pulled a second document from beneath the ledger. Her hands were steady, but her voice had an edge. Vernon Hardin filed a property lien against Silas Cord's ranch this morning, claims an unpaid debt of $800 from 1929. The room erupted. Jessup swore. Doc's face went hard. $800? I said. I never borrowed a dime from Vernon Hardin. B held up the paper. He's got a promissory note, signed, dated July 15th, 1929. My stomach dropped. $800 was more than I'd see in 2 years. I'd never borrowed that money, never signed that note, but Vernon had the paper, and the paper was the law. He's got you in a pincer, Silas, B said quietly. You fight for the girl, he forecloses on your ranch. You give up the girl, he lets the debt slide. Marshal Keene put his hat on. Both matters go before the county on May 15th, same day. He left. Half the room followed. The room. I stood there with $11 in my pocket and a choice I couldn't make. I walked outside. The cold air hit my face like a slap. Callie was sitting in the truck bed, knees pulled to her chest, staring at the stars. Vernon's automobile was parked across the street. He stepped out of the shadows, a cigarette glowing between his fingers. Tate stood beside him, that leather folder tucked under his arm like a weapon. Evening, Cord. Vernon flicked ash onto the frozen ground. Heard it went about as expected in there. I kept walking toward the truck. Wait, his voice sharpened. I'm offering you a way out. I stopped, didn't turn around. You're a reasonable man, Vernon said. You know you can't win this. You're too old to raise a girl. You don't have the money to fight me. And that ranch of yours? He took a drag, exhaled slowly. That ranch is mine the minute I want it. I turned. You forged that promissory note. He smiled. Prove it. You think some county judge is going to take your word over signed paperwork? Tate here's got 3 witnesses who'll swear they saw you borrow that money. Tate nodded, his face blank as a snake's. Vernon stepped closer, the sweet smell of his cologne mixed with tobacco smoke. Here's what's going to happen. May 15th, you're going to stand up in that courthouse and tell the judge you can't care for the girl. You're going to say you were mistaken, that you acted out of misguided charity, and that her rightful guardian should take custody. And if I don't? Then on May 16th, I foreclose. You lose the ranch your grandfather built. You lose the land you've worked for 30 years. You lose everything. He paused. But if you do the smart thing, if you give me Callie, I'll tear up that promissory note. You keep your ranch. You keep your dignity. Everybody walks away whole. The wind picked up, cutting through my coat. Behind me, I heard Callie shift in the truck bed. She was listening. She heard every word. Why do you want her? I asked. You don't care about that child. You beat her, starved her. Vernon's smile faded. She's leverage, Cord. Her mama was supposed to marry a man with money, a man who would have helped me expand. Instead, she ran off with some drifter, got herself knocked up, and died leaving me with a squalling brat I never wanted. But she's mine by law, and that's all that matters. She's Martha's niece, I said. She's my kin. So you figured that out? He shrugged. Doesn't change anything. Blood or not, you can't keep her. You're one old man with a broke-down ranch and empty pockets. He took one last drag, dropped the cigarette, crushed it under his polished shoe. You've got until May 15th to make the smart choice. He climbed into his automobile. Tate followed. The engine roared to life, and they drove off, red taillights disappearing into the dark. I stood there in the cold, my breath coming out in clouds. Doc Pruitt came out of the store, B beside him. They didn't say anything, didn't need to. I climbed into the truck. Callie was still in the bed, but when I looked back through the rear window, her eyes met mine. Papa? She whispered. First time she'd called me that, I couldn't answer. My throat was too tight. I started the engine and drove us home. That night, I sat at the table with the 2 envelopes in front of me. One was the custody petition, the other was the lien notice. Both had the county seal stamped in red wax, official as death. The fire crackled in the hearth. The cabin smelled of wood smoke and coffee gone cold in the pot. Outside, the wind had died down, and the silence pressed against the walls like something living. I heard the creak of the loft ladder. Callie climbed down, barefoot, wearing the nightgown B had given her. She crossed the room and stood beside my chair, not touching, just standing there. I looked at the envelopes. $800. A fortune I didn't have. A debt I never owed. Vernon had me, he knew it, I knew it. I picked up his ultimatum letter, the one Tate had slipped under my door before they drove off. The paper was thick, expensive. The words were typed neat and legal. Withdraw custody claim by March 25th or face foreclosure proceedings. Callie watched me. Her green eyes, Martha's eyes, were steady in the firelight. I stood, walked to the hearth, and fed the letter to the flames. It curled, blackened, turned to ash. "What if I'm bad luck?" Callie whispered. I knelt down so we were eye to eye. "You listen to me. You're not bad luck. You're not a curse. You're not any of the things those people say. Uncle Vernon says I killed Mama, says she died because of me." My hands curled into fists. I forced them open, made my voice steady. "Your mama died bringing you into this world. That's not your fault. That's just the hard way life goes sometimes." She looked at the fire. "He'll take the ranch. Maybe. And then you'll have nothing." I reached out, slow, giving her time to pull away. When she didn't, I put my hand on her shoulder. "A man who'd bargain a child for land ain't a man I'll treat with. You hear me? We're in this together now." Her chin trembled. She nodded. "Go on back to bed," I said. Morning comes early." She climbed the ladder. I heard the boards creak as she settled into the loft. The fire burned low, shadows dancing on the walls. I sat back down at the table, looked at the custody petition, the lien notice. May 15th, 2 months away. 2 months to prove I could care for her. 2 months to find $800 I didn't have. 2 months to fight a man with lawyers and lies and the law on his side. Outside, something cracked. A tree branch, heavy with ice, breaking under the weight. Morning came with the first signs of thaw. The icicles hanging from the barn roof were dripping, steady as a clock. The creek ice groaned and cracked, water moving underneath. It was late February, still cold, but the grip of deep winter was loosening. I found Callie in the barn, sitting by the tractor again. Blue was with her, his tail thumping when he saw me. "Need to fix the east fence," I said. "Spring runoff will flood the pasture if we don't." She stood, followed me out to the shed. I gathered tools, wire cutters, pliers, a coil of barbed wire, and loaded them into the truck bed. She climbed in beside me without being asked. The drive out to the east pasture took 10 minutes, the truck bouncing over frozen ruts that were starting to soften into mud. When we got there, I could see where the posts had rotted through, where the wire sagged loose. "Here's how it works," I said. "You thread the wire through the post holes. I'll pull it tight and secure it. Got it?" She nodded. I handed her the end of the wire. Her hands were small, the work awkward, but she didn't complain. She threaded it through the first hole, then the second. I pulled it taut with the pliers, twisted the ends, hammered in a staple to hold it. We worked in silence, the sound of metal on wood ringing across the empty pasture. The smell of wet earth was starting to rise where the sun hit the ground. Somewhere, a robin called, the first I'd heard since November. Old man Jessup rode up on his gray mare, reined in at the fence line. He was 70 if he was a day, weathered as old leather, but he sat straight in the saddle. "Heard about the trouble," he said. "Word travels." Always does. He watched Callie threading wire, her tongue caught between her teeth in concentration. "That Vernon Hardin's a snake, always has been." "Yep. You need anything, you holler. I mean that." "Appreciate it, Jessup." He tipped his hat, kicked the mare into a trot, and rode off toward his own land. Callie looked up at me. "Are there good people left?" "Some," I said. "Enough." We finished the fence as the sun climbed higher. The ice on the creek was breaking apart now, chunks of it floating downstream. The sound was like 1,000 small bells ringing. Callie stood at the fence line, watching the water move. "Papa? Yeah? Is Uncle Vernon coming back?" I looked at the melting ice, the brown grass starting to show through the snow, the sky, pale blue and endless. "He's coming," I said, "but we'll be ready." B. Lowell convinced me Callie needed schooling, not for the law, though that would help come May, but because a 9-year-old girl deserved more than fence mending and silence. The school was nothing formal, just B's back room at the store on Tuesday and Thursday mornings. 6 children from town, ages 7 to 12. B taught them reading, arithmetic, a little history. She'd been a school teacher before she married, before her husband died in a logging accident and left her the store. I brought Callie down on a Thursday. She sat close to me in the truck, watching the road like something might jump out of the trees. "You'll do fine," I said. She didn't answer. The store smelled of flour and tobacco and the cold, metallic scent of the pot-bellied stove. B met us at the door, smiled at Callie. "Come on back, honey. We're just starting." 5 children sat at a long table, slates in front of them. I recognized the Henderson boy, 10 years old with his father's sharp nose, 2 younger girls I didn't know, an older boy, maybe 12, and a small girl with pigtails who looked up and smiled when Callie walked in. B pulled out a chair. "This is Callie. She'll be joining us." The Henderson boy stared. His eyes moved from Callie's face to the faint bruise still visible on her cheek, the one that had gone from purple to yellow-green. "My pa says she's cursed," he said, loud enough for everyone to hear. B's voice went cold as iron. "Your pa's got a mouth that runs faster than his brain. Tommy Henderson. One more word like that, and you'll be spending school time scrubbing my floors." Tommy shut up, but his eyes stayed on Callie, mean and calculating. I left her there, drove up to Doc Pruitt's to help him split firewood. He couldn't manage it anymore, with his bad back. We worked for 2 hours, the sound of the axe biting into wood echoing in the cold air. When I came back to get Callie, B was standing on the store steps, arms crossed, jaw tight. "What happened?" I asked. "Tommy Henderson happened." Inside, Callie sat alone at the table. The other children were gone. Her knuckles were scraped raw, bleeding a little. Her dress was torn at the shoulder. Tommy Henderson sat in the corner, holding a rag to his nose. Blood had dripped down his shirt front, bright red against the white cotton. "He called her mother a whore," B said quietly. "Said Vernon told his father, and his father told him. Said Callie was bastard trash and didn't belong with decent folk." I looked at Callie. She stared at the table, her hands in her lap. "She broke his nose," B continued. "One punch. Knocked him clean off his chair." Tommy's mother, Mrs. Henderson from church, burst through the door, her face red and furious. "That wild animal attacked my son." "Your son," B said, each word clipped, called a 9-year-old girl a whore. He was repeating what he heard, what everyone knows. "Vernon Hardin says—" "Vernon Hardin," I said, turning to face her, "beats children and lies to judges. If your boy's repeating Vernon's words, maybe you ought to think about what kind of man you're listening to." Mrs. Henderson's mouth opened and closed. She grabbed Tommy by the arm, yanked him to his feet. "We'll be talking to Marshal Keene about this. You can't let that girl run wild, Cord. She's dangerous." She dragged Tommy out. The door slammed behind them. The silence that followed was heavy as wet snow. B knelt down beside Callie's chair. "You did the right thing, honey, standing up for yourself. But folks are going to use this. You understand that?" Callie nodded. A tear slipped down her cheek, but she didn't make a sound. I put my hand on her shoulder. "Let's go home." We drove back in silence. Halfway up the mountain, she finally spoke. "He said Mama was bad. Said I killed her, and that's why Uncle Vernon has to punish me." My hands tightened on the wheel. "Your mama wasn't bad. She was young and scared, and she loved you enough to bring you into this world, even though it cost her life. That's not bad. That's the bravest thing a person can do." "Then why does everyone hate me?" "They don't hate you. They're just scared. And scared people say stupid, cruel things." She wiped her face with the back of her hand. "Uncle Vernon's telling everyone you're not fit, that you're too old, and I'm making you crazy." "He's poisoning the well," I said, "making sure when May comes nobody'll stand with us." The truck hit a rut. We bounced, and Callie grabbed the door handle. "What are we going to do?" she asked. I didn't have an answer. That evening, B. Lowell showed up at the ranch. She drove her own truck, a battered Ford that coughed black smoke. She climbed out carrying a leather satchel, her face set in hard lines. "We need to talk," she said. I made coffee while she spread papers across the kitchen table. Callie watched from the loft, her face barely visible in the shadows. B pulled out the lean document, smoothed it flat. "I've been going through county records for the past 2 weeks. Every night after closing, I stay late. Deputy clerk privileges." She tapped the paper. "This promissory note Vernon filed? Something about it's been eating at me." "What?" "The signature. Look here." She pointed to my supposed signature at the bottom. "See how neat it is? How steady?" I leaned closer. The signature read Silas Cord in smooth, flowing script. "That's not how you write," B said. "You've got arthritis in your right hand. Been that way since the war. Your signature's shaky, letters smaller. I've seen it 100 times on store receipts." She pulled out another paper, a receipt from her store dated 1928. My signature was there, cramped and uneven, the S barely legible. "It's a forgery," I said. "I think so, but that's not all." She dug deeper in the satchel, came up with an old ledger, bound in cracked leather. "This is the county work registry from 1929. Lists every man who signed on for drought relief crews that summer." She opened it to a page marked with ribbon, ran her finger down the entries. July 15th, 1929, the date on that promissory note. You were in Wyoming, Silas. Cody, Wyoming. Signed on for a 6-week stint building irrigation ditches. I found your name right here, and the foreman's signature confirming your presence. My heart kicked. That proves I couldn't have borrowed the money. It proves you weren't in Montana on the date Vernon claims you signed that note. Bee's smile was fierce. That's fraud, clear as day. Can we use this in court? We can, but there's a problem. She closed the ledger. Statute of limitations on fraud is 5 years in Montana. Vernon filed this lien in March 1936. If he claims the original loan was 1929, the statute ran out in 1934. Even if we prove it's forged, a judge might say we're too late to challenge it. The hope that had flared in my chest guttered. So it doesn't matter. I didn't say that. B leaned forward. If we can prove Vernon knew it was fraudulent when he filed it, that he forged it specifically to coerce you, that's a separate crime. That's contemporary, that we can use. How do we prove that? I'm working on it. Vernon's careful, but he's also arrogant. He thinks nobody's paying attention. She gathered the papers, slid them back into the satchel. He's been reviewing land deeds at the county office every Tuesday for the past 3 months. Always the same thing. Water rights, boundary surveys, spring access. He's planning something big. The downstream parcels he mentioned. He needs my water rights to guarantee flow. Exactly. And if he gets custody of Callie, he thinks you'll roll over. Give him the ranch to keep from losing her. He gets the water, sells his land for a fortune, and disappears. I looked up at the loft. Callie was still watching, listening to every word. What do I need to do? I asked. Keep her safe. Keep yourself out of trouble. And let me dig. B stood, slung the satchel over her shoulder. Vernon's made mistakes. He's had to. A forgery this clean requires practice, requires materials. Somewhere there's evidence. Draft copies, practice signatures. Something. I'll find it. She walked to the door, paused. Silas, that scene at the store today? Mrs. Henderson's already talking to half the town. She's saying Callie's violent, uncontrollable, that you can't handle her. Vernon's going to use it. I know. The hearing's in 8 weeks. We don't have much time. After she left, I sat at the table, staring at my coffee. The fire had burned down to embers, the cabin growing cold. Callie climbed down from the loft. She sat in the chair across from me, her small hands folded on the table. Miss B's trying to help us, she said. She is. But Uncle Vernon's smarter. He's always been smarter. Her voice was flat, matter of fact. He used to tell me that, said I was stupid like Mama, that thinking wasn't for people like us. You're not stupid. He'll win. He always wins. I reached across the table, covered her hands with mine. Not this time. She looked at me with those green eyes, Martha's eyes, and I saw something break open in them. Not hope, exactly. Something harder, something that looked like determination. What if I told the judge? She asked. What Uncle Vernon did? You'd have to be brave, braver than any child should have to be. I can be brave, she whispered, if you're there. Outside, the last of the snow was melting. Water dripped from the eaves, steady as a heartbeat, and somewhere in the dark a coyote called, long and lonesome. Spring was coming, and with it, judgment. The blizzard hit on March 23rd, 3 days after the fight at the store. It came out of nowhere, the sky turning from pale blue to iron gray in the span of an hour. By noon, the wind was howling like something alive, and the snow fell so thick I couldn't see the barn from the cabin window. We were trapped. No getting down the mountain, no supplies coming up, just me and Callie and Blue, and the storm that screamed against the walls. The first 2 days weren't bad. We had firewood, dried beans, salt pork, cornmeal. I kept the fire going, melted snow for water, cooked what we had. Callie stayed close, reading an old book Bee had given her, her lips moving silently over the words. But by the 3rd day, something in me started to break. I sat at the table that night, staring at the fire. The wind rattled the shutters. Snow had drifted halfway up the door. We were buried, isolated, cut off from everything, just like I'd been after Martha died. Maybe they're right, I said. Didn't mean to say it out loud. The words just came. Callie looked up from her book. About what? Maybe I am too old. Maybe you need a real family. People who know how to raise a girl proper. I rubbed my face, felt the stubble rough under my palm. I'm 58 years old. I don't know the first thing about braiding hair or teaching you to be a lady. Hell, I can barely keep this ranch going. She closed the book, set it on the floor, didn't say anything. Vernon's got money, I continued. The words tasted like poison, but I couldn't stop them. He could send you to a real school, get you nice dresses. Maybe if I just... Stop. Her voice was small, but it cut through my spiral like a blade. You don't mean that, she said. I'm just saying maybe... No. She stood up. Her hands were balled into fists. You're scared. That's okay. But you don't get to give up on me. I'm not giving up. I'm trying to think about what's best for you. What's best for me? Her voice rose sharp with something that might have been anger or might have been terror. What's best for me is not going back to him. He burned me, Papa. He held my hand on the stove because I spilled milk. He locked me in the cellar for 2 days because I cried when I was hungry. He told me every single day that I killed Mama, that I was worthless, that nobody would ever want me. Tears were streaming down her face now, but she didn't stop. And then you found me. You carried me to Doc Pruitt. You gave me your bed. You taught me about tools and fixing things, and... Her voice broke. You called me family. You can't take that back. You can't. I stood up, but she backed away. I heard what Uncle Vernon said. I heard him say you'd lose everything, and I know that's because of me. But Papa, if you send me back... She wiped her face with the back of her hand, smearing tears and snot across her cheek. If you send me back, I'll die. Maybe not right away, but he'll kill everything in me that's good, everything you helped me find. The wind screamed, the fire crackled, Blue whined from his spot by the hearth. I crossed the room and knelt down in front of her. She flinched, but didn't pull away. I ain't giving you up, I said. My voice was rough. Not to him, not to nobody. You hear me? She nodded, but she was shaking. I'm scared too, I said. Scared I'm gonna fail you. Scared I can't protect you from what's coming. But we're in this together. That's what family means. She threw her arms around my neck and held on like I was the only solid thing in a world of storm. I held her back. This small, fierce girl who'd punched a boy for calling her mother names, who'd survived 9 years of hell and still had the courage to hope. I won't let him take you, I whispered into her hair. I swear it. We stayed like that until the shaking stopped, hers and mine, both. That night, the storm got worse. The temperature dropped, and the wind found every crack in the walls. I piled blankets on Callie, kept the fire roaring, but around midnight I heard her crying out in her sleep. I climbed the loft ladder. She was thrashing under the quilts, making small hurt sounds. Don't burn me, she whimpered. Please don't burn me. I touched her shoulder and she screamed, came up swinging. Her fist caught me in the jaw. Not hard, but hard enough. She was awake, but not awake, trapped somewhere between dream and memory. Callie, it's me. You're safe. Recognition flooded back into her eyes. She gasped, started crying. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I didn't mean... It's okay. You're okay. I dreamed he came. I dreamed he took me back, and he's not here. He can't get through the storm. But she couldn't stop shaking, so I sat down on the edge of the loft bed, and she curled up against me, and I held her until the sun came up gray and cold through the window. The blizzard finally broke on the morning of the 10th day. The sky cleared to hard blue, and the silence after all that wind was like a physical presence. I opened the door and had to shovel 3 feet of snow just to get outside, but we were still standing, both of us, together. May 15th came warm and clear, the kind of day that made you believe in second chances. Doc Pruitt picked us up at dawn. Callie wore the blue dress Bea had made for her with white buttons down the front and a collar Martha would have been proud of. Her hair was braided. Bea had done it the night before, taught her how to keep it neat. She looked older than 9. Looked like she'd lived 100 years. The courthouse sat on the main square in Helena, 2 hours down from the ranch. Red brick, 3 stories tall, with white columns that were supposed to make you think of justice and fairness and all the things the law promised but didn't always deliver. There were more people than I expected. Word had spread. Old Man Jessup was there, sitting on the courthouse steps with his hat in his hands. 3 other ranchers I knew by sight. Bea, of course, wearing her best dress and carrying a leather folder thick with papers. Even Marshal Keene stood off to the side, watching everything with those careful eyes. Vernon arrived in his automobile, Tate the lawyer beside him. Vernon wore a suit that probably cost more than my truck. His shoes were polished mirror bright. He looked at Callie once, smiled like a man who'd already won, then walked up the steps without a word. Inside, the courtroom smelled of old wood and floor wax and the particular silence of places where people's lives got decided. Judge Crawley sat behind a high desk, 60-some years old with white hair and spectacles that caught the light. He looked tired. Probably heard 100 cases just like this one. We sat at the table on the left. Vernon and Tate sat on the right. The gallery filled up behind us. Ranchers on our side, townspeople who'd believed Vernon's lies on his. The judge banged his gavel once. Case of Hardin versus Cord regarding custody of the minor child Callie Mae Hardin. Mr. Tate, you may proceed. Tate stood, buttoned his jacket, and launched into his argument. He spoke for 20 minutes about my age, my isolation, my lack of means to provide proper female guidance. He called me well-meaning but misguided. He said Vernon was the child's blood kin, her legal guardian appointed by the county, a man of means who could provide education and opportunity. He made it sound reasonable, made it sound like Vernon was the victim here. When he finished, the judge looked at me. Mr. Cord, you have representation? No, sir, just the truth. The judge's eyebrows went up slightly. Proceed. I stood. My mouth was dry as dust. Your Honor, I'm not going to pretend I'm perfect. I am too old. I do live on a mountain, and I don't know the first thing about raising a girl proper. I paused. But I know how to keep her safe. I know how to teach her she's got worth, and I know that Vernon Hardin beats children. Tate shot to his feet. Objection. Unsubstantiated. Dr. Emmett Pruitt examined her, I said. He's here to testify. The judge nodded. Dr. Pruitt, approach. Doc stood, walked to the witness chair, put his hand on the Bible. The bailiff swore him in. Doctor, the judge said, what did you observe when you examined the child? Doc's voice was steady. Broken ribs, multiple contusions, a burn scar on her left hand consistent with deliberate contact with a heated surface, likely a stove, signs of malnutrition and prolonged physical abuse. The courtroom murmured. Vernon's face stayed blank. Could these injuries have been accidental? The judge asked. No, sir. The pattern suggests repeated intentional harm. Tate stood again. The child is clumsy. Mr. Hardin has provided care for 9 years under difficult circumstances. I also have photographs, Doc said. He pulled an envelope from his coat, handed it to the bailiff, who passed it to the judge. Judge Crawley opened it. His face went hard. He looked at Vernon, then at Callie. Miss Lowell, he said, you filed a motion regarding a financial matter? B stood, opened her folder. Yes, Your Honor. Mr. Hardin filed a property lien against Mr. Cord's ranch, claiming an unpaid debt of $800 from July 1929. She approached the bench, handed him the papers. This is the county work registry from that year, showing Mr. Cord was employed in Wyoming on the date the promissory note was allegedly signed. The signature on the note is a forgery. The judge studied the papers. The silence stretched long and tight. Mr. Hardin, he said finally, do you wish to respond to this allegation? Vernon stood, smoothed his tie. A clerical error, Your Honor. The date may have been. The signature is not Mr. Cord's, the judge interrupted. That much is clear. Tate leaned over, whispered something urgent to Vernon. Vernon's jaw tightened. The judge set the papers down. Before I rule, I'd like to hear from the child herself. He looked at Callie. Miss Hardin, can you approach the bench? Callie's hand found mine under the table. She squeezed once, hard, then she let go and stood up. Callie walked to the bench. She looked so small standing there, the judge towering above her even seated. The whole courtroom held its breath. Judge Crawley leaned forward, his voice gentle. Callie, I need to ask you some questions. You understand you need to tell me the truth? Yes, sir. Good. Now, can you tell me who you want to live with? She looked back at me, then at Vernon. Her hands were shaking, but she lifted her left one, turned it palm up so the judge could see the scar. Uncle Vernon did this, she said. Her voice was small, but clear. I spilled milk on the table. He grabbed my hand and held it on the stove. He said I needed to learn to be more careful. The courtroom erupted in whispers. The judge banged his gavel. He used to lock me in the cellar, Callie continued, sometimes for a whole day. He said I was bad luck, that I killed my mama, that nobody would ever want me. Her voice cracked, but she kept going. He told me if I ever told anyone, he'd send me away on the orphan train where nobody would find me. Vernon's face had gone pale. Tate was scribbling notes furiously. And Mr. Cord? The judge asked. How has he treated you? Callie's chin trembled. Papa found me at his gate. I was dying. He carried me to Doc Pruitt. He gave me his bed. He taught me how to fix the tractor, how to mend fence, how to... Her voice broke. He taught me Mama's song, the one she used to sing. What song is that? She hummed 3 notes, soft, lilting. The lullaby Martha used to hum in the garden, the one her sister Lily sang, the one that tied 3 generations of women together. Papa never hurt me, Callie said. Papa fixed me. The judge's eyes were wet. He cleared his throat, looked at Vernon. Mr. Hardin, do you have anything to say? Vernon stood. For the first time since I'd known him, he looked uncertain. Your Honor, the child has been manipulated. Cord has filled her head with... She has scars, Mr. Hardin, medical records, photographs. The judge's voice went cold. And now testimony under oath. Tate pulled Vernon back down, whispered urgently. Vernon shook his head, but Tate kept talking. The judge looked at Marshal Keene. Marshal, please escort Mr. Hardin into custody. Charges of child endangerment and filing fraudulent legal documents. The courtroom exploded. Vernon shot to his feet. You can't. I have rights. 2 deputies moved forward. Vernon looked at Callie, and for just a moment I saw something behind his eyes. Not remorse, not regret, just pure, cold rage that he'd been beaten by a 9-year-old girl and an old man with empty pockets. She's nothing, he hissed. Her mother was nothing. They're both... One of the deputies grabbed his arm. That's enough. They walked him out. His polished shoes scraped on the wood floor, the sound echoing in the sudden silence. The judge turned back to Callie. Miss Hardin, custody is awarded to Silas Cord with immediate effect. The property lien is dismissed as fraudulent. Mr. Cord, the child is legally yours. Callie ran. Across the courtroom, past the railing, straight into my arms. I caught her, held her, and she buried her face in my shoulder. Papa, she said. Not a question, not a plea, just a statement of fact. Behind us I heard Bea crying. Doc Pruitt's hand landed on my shoulder, squeezed once. Old Man Jessup whooped from the gallery. The judge banged his gavel again. Court is adjourned. We walked out of that courthouse into the brightest May afternoon I'd ever seen, and as we reached the steps, the first drops of rain began to fall. Not a storm, just a soft, warm spring rain, the kind that brings everything back to life. The rain fell soft on the courthouse steps. People stood with their faces turned up, letting the water wash over them. It was the first real rain in 3 months, and you could smell it, that sweet, earthy smell of water meeting dust. Mrs. Henderson walked past us, her son Tommy beside her. She stopped, looked at Callie, then at me. For a moment I thought she'd say something cruel. Instead she nodded, just once, then kept walking. Old Man Jessup clapped me on the back hard enough to make me stumble. Knew you'd win, Cord. Knew it in my bones. Wasn't me, I said. Was her. Callie stood beside me, rain darkening her blue dress, her face tilted to the sky. She was smiling. Not a big smile, but a real one. The first I'd seen that reached her eyes. Bea came down the steps, her folder tucked under her arm. I'll file the adoption papers next week. Make it permanent and legal. No more guardianship. You'll be her father in the eyes of the law. Appreciate everything you did, Bea. Wasn't much. Just followed the paper trail. She looked at Callie. You were the brave one, honey. Standing up there, telling the truth. That took more courage than most grown folks have. Callie nodded, but didn't speak. She was watching the rain puddle in the street, watching it run down the courthouse steps in little rivers. Doc Pruitt handed me an envelope. Adoption papers, like Bea said, and this. He pulled out a small paper bag, hard candy wrapped in wax paper. He gave it to Callie. For the road home. She took it, looked up at him. Thank you for helping us. You helped yourselves, child. I just told the truth. Marshal Keene came out last, his hat low against the rain. He stopped when he saw me. Cord. Marshal. For what it's worth, I'm glad it went the way it did. He looked uncomfortable, like the words cost him something. Vernon Hardin's been a thorn in this county's side for years. Maybe now we can get some peace. He walked off before I could answer. We stood there a while longer, watching the rain fall. The sky was clearing to the west, blue showing through the gray. By the time we got home, it'd be full spring. Ready? I asked Callie. She took my hand. Ready. We walked to Doc's truck. The engine coughed to life, and we drove out of Helena, with the rain following us up the mountain. Through the rear window, I could see the courthouse getting smaller, the red brick fading into the distance until it disappeared entirely. Behind us, done. We were going home. The rain followed us all the way up the mountain. By the time we reached the ranch, the whole valley was green with it. The grass that had been brown and dormant for 6 months was coming alive, pushing up through the wet earth. The creek ran full, singing over the rocks. Doc dropped us at the gate and tipped his hat. "See you Sunday for dinner, if the invitation still stands." "Always does," I said. We walked up the drive, mud sucking at our boots. Blue came tearing out of the barn, barking and spinning in circles. Callie dropped to her knees, and he crashed into her, licking her face until she laughed. The sound of that laugh, clear and bright and unafraid, was worth more than any verdict. We went inside. The cabin smelled like wood smoke and coffee and home. I lit the fire, even though we didn't need it, just for the comfort of it. Callie hung her wet dress by the hearth and changed into the work clothes she preferred, the boy's trousers and flannel shirt that let her move free. "I'm hungry," she said. I fried eggs and salt pork, made cornbread in the cast-iron skillet. We ate at the table by the window, watching the rain turn the world soft and green. The light was golden, slanting through the clouds. After, she went to the loft and came back down with something in her hands, a piece of paper, folded small. She set it on the table in front of me. "I drew this," she said, "during the blizzard." I unfolded it. It was done in charcoal from the hearth. The ranch, rough but recognizable. The cabin, the barn, the fence line. And 2 figures standing together, one tall and one small. Above them, she'd written 3 words in careful letters. "This is home." My throat went tight. "It's real good, Callie." "Can we keep it?" "Of course we can." She smiled, then went to the window. The rain was letting up, blue sky breaking through. In the east pasture, I could see movement, the cows coming out of the trees, the new calves following their mothers on wobbly legs. "Papa," Callie said, "can I name one of the calves?" "Sure. Which one?" "The littlest one, the one that's all white." "What are you going to call her?" She thought about it, watching the calf stumble and right itself, watching it find its legs. "Hope," she said. "I want to call her Hope." "That's a good name." She turned from the window, looked at me. "What happens now?" "Now?" I stood, stretched. "Now we fix that tractor, get the planning done, mend what needs mending." I put my hand on her shoulder. "We live, Callie. That's what happens now. We just live." Outside, the sun broke through completely. The rain stopped, and somewhere in the distance a bird called, bright and clear and full of spring. A month passed, then another. The tractor ran again. Callie handed me the tools by name now, never got them wrong. The fence held against the spring runoff. The garden came up green, and she learned to pull weeds without being told. Doc Pruitt came for Sunday dinners, so did Bee. Sometimes Old Man Jessup rode over with fresh trout from the creek. The cabin, that had been too quiet for too long, filled up with voices and laughter and the sound of living. The adoption papers came through in June. Callie Mae Cord, legal and permanent. She cried when I showed her, and I did too, though I'm not proud to admit it. One evening in late June, we sat on the porch watching the sunset. The air was warm, smelled of wild roses and new hay. Blue lay at our feet, snoring. Callie leaned against me, humming that lullaby soft and low. "Papa?" she said. "Yeah?" "What happens if bad people come again?" I thought about Vernon, sitting in a county jail cell. Thought about all the people who'd tried to tell us we didn't belong together. Thought about how close we'd come to losing everything. "Then we'll face them," I said. "Same way we did before, together." She nodded, satisfied. Then she pointed to the east pasture where Hope, the white calf, grazed beside her mother. "She's getting big." "She is." "You think Mama would be proud? My real Mama?" I pulled her closer. "I think your Mama brought you into this world knowing she wouldn't be here to raise you, but she loved you enough to give you life anyway. And I think wherever she is, she sees you now, strong and brave and good, and yeah, honey, I think she's real proud." Callie was quiet for a long moment. Then she said, soft as a prayer, "I think she sent me to you." Maybe she did. Maybe Martha had something to do with it too, guiding her sister's child to the one place she'd be safe. I don't know. I'm not a religious man. But I know this. The rain that year brought more than grass. It brought family back to land that had been alone too long. And that, I reckon, is mercy enough for any man.